Tēnā koutou. Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Maree, Area Manager for Business Banking here at Westpac. And thanks for joining us today for this Westpac Smarts webinar on unlocking the potential of Gen Z in the workplace. Westpac Smarts is a year-round speaker series aimed at helping set Kiwi businesses up for success. A big welcome back to everyone who regularly tunes in, and a warm welcome if you're tuning in for the first time. At Westpac, we believe it's greater people who make for greater business. We've designed this series to share expert knowledge and insights from our own people and from industry experts to help you in your business journey. Today, we're talking about unlocking the potential of Gen Z in the workplace. Some of the key points from this session: who is Generation Z and what shaped them? Strengths of the generation and how to get the best workplace outcomes. Mental health specific to this generation. I'm joined by a couple of experts who are going to weigh into this topic and together discuss how businesses and managers can really tap into the potential of Gen Z and what they can offer a business. The session today is planned for 45 minutes, kicking off with a discussion I'll be leading with our panelists and allowing 15 minutes for your questions at the end. The Q&A will be running live on the right of your screen, so register your questions as they come to mind and please indicate the panelist you'd like to direct it to. If you like a question raised by someone, click on it to increase its rating, and we'll work our way through the highest rated questions first. I'm going to ask our panelists to give a brief intro and share their backgrounds. Let's start with you, Millie Mackie.
Good morning, everybody. As you may have read in my bio, I'm an HR advisor here at Westpac, former HR graduate and full-time Gen Z. And I'm really excited to be here today sharing my experience as a Gen Z in the workplace, finally presenting on a topic at work that I feel like I know a lot about.
Thanks, Millie. Our special guest, Louise Saviker.
Tēnā tātou. I'm also from an HR background and see Gen Z up close and personal every day, at home as a parent of 2 Gen Z kids, and at work as the Chief Executive of Student Job Search. Of the nearly 400,000 tertiary students in New Zealand, around 80% are Gen Z.
Awesome. So Louise, let's jump into it. Who is this infamous Generation Z?
Yeah, so these are the people in our world that are aged between 13 and 29. Look, the rough age of the birth dates are not, there's not great consensus. There's different views on when the generation ends and starts, but it's roughly for people born between 96 and 2012. They're the generation after the millennials, and they're before Generation Alpha.
Nice. So staying with you, Louise, what's shaped this generation into their unique characteristics and traits?
Yes, I think it's been certainly really useful for me to really think about how the world has actively shaped this generation. Their experiences have really influenced how they think, how they work, and how they're engaging with the world. For me personally, I found really deeply understanding the environment that they've grown up in has given me an enormous amount of empathy, and therefore I'm better positioned to be able to support this generation. I think perhaps the biggest influencer of all is the lives that they're leading in the technology space. They have grown up with technology saturation. It's social media, it's digital engagement, it's 24/7 access to everything. Everything is fast and available all the time from anywhere around the globe. There's no need to wait till next week's episode of our favourite show, like in my day. They've also grown up with challenging status quo as just the norm. They're surrounded by political movements like Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ plus rights, Me Too, and gun control activism. The geopolitical conflicts and global instabilities also really increased their awareness of foreign issues, and experiencing war and conflict through social media means this generation has been exposed at a much younger age than generations before. These movements and the global conflicts mean they're far more globally aware and empathetic than any generation before. They've also experienced a series of really big events. The 2008 global financial crisis really contributed to this generation's being, they're really financially cautious, and in some cases has led to them having a strong personal financial planning focus. And they're also really well known for their entrepreneurial mindset. They've also experienced severe weather events just daily. We have them all the time. In Wellington, there's one today. So climate crisis is front and centre for this group. This has driven expectations that workplaces and brands actively support climate change initiatives. Then their world was turned upside down and inside out in every way possible by the pandemic. It disrupted everything in their world at a time when their brains were still developing. They missed out on vital socialisation as young adults, and it drove an expectation of working from home to a group of workers who previously hadn't had that level of flexibility in their early careers. The many challenges that Gen Z has faced socially, economically, and globally have undoubtedly, unfortunately, also contributed to the mental health crisis, and this is a real challenge for this group. Overall, I think it's been quite helpful for me to think about this group having moved from a scarcity to abundance mindset. This group don't necessarily carry forward the previous generation's appetite for mortgage and family, many opting for strong work-life balance and wanting to enjoy its life to the fullest. While many more are aware of financial matters, they just tend to want to live without a scarcity mindset and instead seeking, rich, balanced lives. This generation are really well positioned, therefore, for the gig economy, which is evolving and forecast to continue to grow. If we keep seeing a continued shift towards freelancing, short-term contracts, increased flexible work arrangements, this workforce will be really well positioned with their mindset to embrace it.
Wow. Compared to other generations, this was such a busy time in the global economy with heaps of instrumental changes happening. If we move over to you now, Millie, our very own Gen Z in the business, where do you fit in?
Yeah, so a couple of things that really stick out to me, what Louise was just touching on, and my personal experience, definitely the use of social media, the impact of COVID on my generation, and the mental health push in the workplace. So for a bit of context, I got my first phone when I was about 12. I think it was an iPhone 4. And I really quickly downloaded as much social media as possible, and it's never really stopped since. And I'm not sure if it's sad to say that I can't imagine my life without social media now, but it's definitely made an impact on my experience in the workplace growing up with a presence on social media. In my personal life, I'm so used to constantly flicking through various different platforms, answering messages on different channels. And I think that mentality or habit has subconsciously translated into the workplace. And I have to make a really conscious effort not to react to messages as soon as they appear, for example, and sort of try and be everywhere all at once like I am in my personal life with social media, and like setting those boundaries. And another thing that I think is interesting with my generation is sort of the line between work and personal life and how it's become a little bit more blurred. I don't know if this is just my personal experience, but I consider my co-workers as well as the other grads really close friends. And we spend a lot of time outside of work together, as well as in communication on various social media platforms as well outside of work. In terms of the impact of COVID, for me, it hit right at the beginning of university, just a few months after I moved into Unicole in Dunedin. And I had to make a really quick shift from fully face-to-face learning to 100% remote learning from my home in Auckland in the space of about a day. And the biggest thing from that I noticed, especially when we slowly returned to in-person classes back in Dunedin, was just how much the lack of face-to-face learning actually impacted my year group, not only with the social aspects, but also the real shift in the learning itself and the preferences for online learning over face-to-face learning. And I know some people who didn't attend a single lecture in person for the whole year because they preferred to watch them all online. And it's definitely a nice privilege to be able to have that flexibility and to be able to tailor our learning around our lives rather than the other way around, which it sort of was historically. And I'm definitely seeing now how this is translating with my generation into the workplace. And I know that there's a big preference to have those hybrid working options and the ability to work from home. And lastly, I'll just touch on the mental health in the workplace and the big push for work-life balance. I think from what I've observed, a big difference here with my generation is that we're really sort of putting our foot down on the work-life balance and the importance of that balance on our mental health. And it's no longer really a nice to have. The organisations provide flexibility and options for hybrid working and better leave entitlements, for example. It's more of an expectation and can often be a determining factor for a lot of people when looking for their jobs.
Wow. Louise, you can jump in here, but just this feedback makes a lot of sense about why the generation values hybrid work-life balance due to them having done most of their uni remotely, and it's almost become a way of life.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Millie, I mean, her life changed overnight. And unlike older generations who had a reference point to return to after the pandemic, Gen Z didn't have that same contrast. So I think when we go back and think and pause and about their brain development and where they're at and their development in life, we can really see how it's really shaped them and their attitudes. So while the pandemic affected all of us, it fundamentally shaped this generation's expectations of work, study, and connection. And if we consider it from this point of view, it's easy to understand why they expect flexibility in every part of their life, not just work, but how they interact with tertiary providers, brands, and services as well.
Louise, if we stay with you, tell us a bit more about the unique strengths of this generation and how do employers get the best outcomes?
Yeah, this generation are incredible. I'm clearly biased. They're just the best group to parent. And they also just have so much to offer employers. And every time I meet someone like Millie, I'm just so excited because the workplace flooded with Millies is an exciting place to be. So at work, they bring tech savvy. Their digital fluency accelerates automation, AI adoption, and workplace modernisation. It's not all about working in IT, because of course not all of them or most of them do, but this generation are just awesome at driving solutions through tech and considering how technology can support everything we do. They also are innovative and bring fresh thinking. They challenge traditional methods, bringing creativity and problem solving. They really do ask, but why, a lot. They're more likely to want to take a fresh look and are natural innovators. They grew up in a school system that was all about competency rather than content. So they're really interested in learning. And if managers and workplace really, really lean into this, they'll really reap the rewards. They're also adaptable and change ready. They thrive in fast-paced environments and embrace rapid transformation. And this is great for workplaces who will be able to see less resistance to change and rapid adoption of new technologies or systems that make the boat go faster. They're champions of inclusion, so they just expect diversity and inclusion to be embraced and embedded in every part of a workplace. And we can ensure we're telling the stories of successes of inclusion to really enhance the employee experience at work and in our teams. They're really purpose-driven and impact-focused, and this has been something that's really stuck out to me when I've met Millie. They really do seek meaningful work aligned with social good and authentic values, and you can really leverage this by understanding the unique motivators and drivers and what purposeful means to them personally. So the things that I've heard from Millie may be different to other Gen Zs, and I think that's really important that as we talk about Gen Z, we don't generalise too much, and we remember that they're all unique and to really lean into finding out what drives them personally. They're globally connected and systems thinkers, so they just naturally consider sustainability, global challenges, and interconnected issues. So they're fantastic, therefore, at roles involving product and service design through to strategy roles, pretty much anything in your business. This generation will be able to offer exciting innovation and new thinking too. They're also highly educated and knowledge driven, the most educated generation yet, with access to knowledge and information that has accelerated every part of their learning history through schooling, right through to tertiary and into their workplace. They are smart.
Wow, Millie, what do you think of these strengths, and how does that resonate with you?
Well, it's quite funny to hear all about the strengths of my generation because I know how much myself and some of the other grads have struggled a lot with imposter syndrome since starting full-time work and thinking that we really can't contribute much at all in the initial stages. But I think being forced to adapt during COVID at a young age and such a transformational time in our lives has really helped with my generation's ability to be adaptable and change ready. Myself and a lot of my friends spent our 4 years at university wondering what the next few months would look like, when we would have to fly home for lockdown again, whether our exams were going ahead, and most importantly, when we could start having parties again, which was a big deal. And while it can be hard to accept that we do bring skills to the workplace without having any experience, I do have a real appreciation for the support and encouragement that I've had as a grad, and I think I can speak on behalf of the other grads as well. And I have an amazing boss who's really enabled me to have a lot of autonomy and ownership to make decisions and lead ideas while simultaneously teaching and guiding me through. So I think that's been really incredible and amazing in my experience. And something else that I've really valued as a new starter in the corporate world, that's where I've been able to bring my skills and abilities to life, is my face-to-face interactions in the office. So while I spent a lot of my university career learning online, it's been really refreshing for me to interact so frequently with different people in the wider HR team. And especially as a grad, I constantly and still do have questions and need help with things. And it's also just really cool to be in an environment almost every day surrounded by people who I really look up to and can learn so much from. And something else, just something that's been cool as part of my grad program, is being set up with a mentor. And it's been a really cool experience to have the opportunity to talk and learn about different topics that are a little bit outside of my BAU work. And I've been able to gain really valuable skills and knowledge from our sessions together. So I'd encourage any employer to set up their new grad with a mentor, or for the grad themselves to see if someone they look up to is willing to start that relationship with them.
Oh, great feedback there. Back to you, Louise. Like all generations have their own challenges. The one that stands out most for Generation Z is how they manage stress and anxiety. Can you please share some more about this?
Yeah, I think when we consider the chaos of the world that we've just talked about, that they've grown up in, it's really contributed to a mental health crisis, and the pandemic just added fuel to the fire. It's really alarming to me that half of Gen Zs report feeling excessive levels of anxiety or worry that's difficult for them to control. So stress and anxiety are really real for this generation, and it's important that we approach this with empathy. I think it's really difficult for some people in the workplace juggling heavy responsibilities. It can be hard to relate. So they can think, well, they're a graduate or a junior member of the team. What could possibly be stressing them out so much? So it's really important that we ask them and find out and lean into those situations, because it's a very real problem. And when you, again, go back and consider the context they've grown up in, it's very understandable. So managers also need additional support. They're under pressure and balancing a million things in their day-to-day lives, and now they also need to provide additional support to the younger members of their team. So I think it's really important that people are kind to their managers as well, and that structures and organisations wrap around everybody involved to make sure everyone's got the support, so they can create programs at work to help stress and anxiety in the workplace. You know, we've found it really useful to encourage open conversations about mental health, so challenges can be addressed openly, helping young people realise what's stressing them out in the workplace in particular. Often it's possible to move that on if the anxiety is more of a perception of stress rather than real stress. and just fostering a team culture where failure's shared, problem solving supported, and we don't want anyone sitting at a desk or working in any environment where they're sitting there feeling anxious about perhaps a mistake or something that they feel they could have done better. So really just embracing failure and experimenting as part of day-to-day business is really helpful in helping reduce stress in the workplace.
That's some really awesome insights there. Thanks, Louise. Millie, what's your view on this subject?
Yeah, I think growing up with an online presence and being exposed to the good, bad, and ugly of social media has had some benefits on how my generation perceives mental health. And while social media undoubtedly contribute to the increase in mental health struggles in young people, I think it's also opened up a huge opportunity for people to talk really candidly about how they're actually feeling, whether it's the day-to-day emotions or something a little bit deeper going on. From my own experience, I myself feel really encouraged to be really vulnerable and express if or when I'm feeling stressed and anxious at work. And sometimes all it takes is a little bit of reassurance and encouragement to realize that no one's dying and my team is there to help if I need. So I'm saying that I think if I could give a little piece of advice to the managers of Gen Z or the co-workers of Gen Z employees, it would be to give a little bit more reassurance or praise than you normally would or think that you might need to, because it can be quite hard to gauge if we're doing a good job or not, and that can sometimes lead to a bit of unnecessary perceived anxiety or stress. And praise from managers is worth its weight in gold anyway.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. So back to Louise. We'd better talk about the elephant in the room, Louise. Things Gen Z are perhaps getting a bad reputation for. Can you please share some more about this?
Yeah, look, there are definitely challenges for those of us not in this generation. So I think the more we can understand what shaped Gen Z, the easier it is to find solutions. And when you're in an organisation, it's really important to just think about the organisational strategy at the heart of your solution planning and really make sure that you're balancing the organisational strategy needs versus the Gen Z needs and wants, and make sure you've got the balance right. And that'll be different in every business and every context, depending on the various different factors and needs of your business. But this generation is soon to make up, well, basically it's 27% now, and it's growing every day. The generation following, Gen Alpha, well, like the name suggests, it's going to be like Gen Z, but on steroids. So if we can make changes to our workplaces now and our people strategies, businesses and organisations will be really well served for the next 2 to 3 decades. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, though, and run through some of those more negative views on Gen Z and see how many we can shift. So they're known for shorter attention spans. They're accustomed to fast digital content. They expect us to communicate clearly and get to the point. They want things to be engaging, concise, and straight up. They've grown up with short form content and simply expect us to communicate concisely. This is probably a case, in my view, for myself and for others in non-Gen Z generations, that we probably just need to rise to the new standard. They also have high expectations for work-life balance. We've already talked about this, and Millie has also touched on it. They prioritise flexibility and well-being. This can sometimes clash with old, rigid work structures. This is certainly hard for my generation, where work-life balance was not my normal under age 30. And it's not just the pandemic that's fueled this. There's a multitude of other factors that they have grown up with that have driven this ethos. As an example, even secondary schools have a late start once a week these days. So there's lots of parts of flexibility that's been normal for them that they expect to continue. So Millie's already touched on this. The great news is it's easy for employers to meet this need. Shorter weeks, a late start. There's lots of simple solutions that can really help Gen Z feel really supported in the workforce. So Millie has just also touched on the need for feedback. They really do need continuous development feedback, and this does challenge traditional feedback cycles. So this is a generation that's grown up with everything instantly available. My daughter will sit a university exam and she'll have the results in her portal within minutes. So they really are used to timely feedback. So this can put a strain on managers again. But one of the things that I've noticed in one situation where I was in, we had a really young cohort that in the employee survey, the rating for communication in the organisation was really poor. Rather than actually making changes to the communication strategies or adding more, instead we actually educated the Gen Z cohort on what we were doing, the systems and structures of communication strategies that we had in place and how we were using each channel. And that alone lifted it up to a really high level rate, a high employee rating in the next survey. So again, it's really important that this generation feel communicated and get the feedback, but more importantly, they need to know what those structures are and what they can expect. So I think that, again, that's something that we can quite easily adapt to. They're known for lower employer loyalty, and we are seeing lower retention rates. So again, you go back to your organisational strategy and Gen Z's needs. You need to really ask yourself the question, how important is your retention rate at your organisation? And it's going to be different for every organisation. So you may need to prioritise supporting Gen Z and meeting their needs, or you may need to increase and improve the efficiency of your recruitment and onboarding. So it's important to understand where on the spectrum your business sits and to design your programs accordingly. They do have a discomfort with hierarchies. They prefer collaborative flat structures over traditional top-down leadership models. Organisations are doing a wide variety of things to accommodate this. Project teams are fantastic, working groups, advisory panels on various issues. You can create flatter structures where it's possible. However, again, it really comes down to your organisational strategy and what you can do to support them. Autonomy is also really important to Gen Z, but this needs to be balanced realistically. And personally, I found coaching on risk, understanding risk, identifying risk, and how to mitigate risk in your work has really helped young people understand when they can be autonomous and when they need to seek support before they move forward or make decisions. This generation also really prefer digital first, face-to-face second, and this is again, organisations are doing a fantastic job of leveraging technology. This episode right now is an example of that, but also Teams channels and other things that workplaces have put in place and really meeting this need. And I again think we just need to pause, consider the mental health crisis, and just consider the removal of socialisation and how much we need to bring back to this group to make sure that they are socialising with their colleagues and forming those relationships and having the opportunity to really understand what true collaboration in the workplace looks like. This generation also expect mental health to be prioritised in companies. So they do need our help, but we just need to be wary of applying solutions that may have worked for us. So teams like Millie, where she works in an HR team, it would be useful to be surveying employees, making sure you've got the right initiatives in place, and then testing them routinely to make sure that you've got the right support with the right groups. So just as an example, this generation have the highest rate of gym memberships than any generation before, and may be more likely to prefer gym membership as an added benefit to working at your company over something like health insurance, which is often routinely offered as well in some organisations.
These provide such good insights and also the possibility to change our negative perceptions into opportunities, especially for employers. I think that's given us a lot more insight into the Gen Z and their characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses. We are going to go on to the next section of this webinar, which is the Q&A. We'll be using Slido, so please feel free to participate. And let's start off with the first question. And this one's to you, Millie. Keen to understand if you have any frustrations with older generations in the workplace.
Well, I'm not going to have a dig at my older co-workers here. But potentially one thing that I have observed is they may be a little more stuck in an older mindset of maybe how things were done in their time or in their generation, and that is the right way to do something or to approach something. And they may be a little less adaptive to different ways of working or new ideas. But in saying that, without having the different mindsets and ways of thinking and working, we wouldn't have nearly as much diversity and differing perspectives or interesting debates over topics. And it wouldn't be nearly as interesting in the office. So I'm a big advocate for working across generations and really honing in on the different perspectives that they bring.
Great answer there, Millie. Louise, if we move on to you, the question is, flexible working is obviously valued, but if you aren't a corporate or a desk job, it isn't so easy. What can other workplaces do to attract Gen Z?
Yeah, so I think the working from home gets a lot of airtime given that it's actually only available to quite a small group of workers. So obviously anyone who has front-facing responsibilities in health, education, manufacturing, retail, hospital, tourism. I mean, all of these industries require people to be on the ground and actually connecting with customers and people every day. So these sectors have been doing a great job of flexible working for many decades. They offer some examples are things like factories that offer school hours for working parents. In the student population, we have incredible industries, and particularly in hospo and retail, that offer flexible working times, hours that can change with semesters. For students, you can work weekends. You can change the amount of hours depending on how busy you are. So there's already some incredible flexibility shown across different industries. And I think for people, because a key issue for a lot of employers at the moment is trying to encourage people back to the office. And I think in those situations, it's just a great idea for employers to really educate and talk about all of the different options of flexi working, not just working from home, and that can really help everybody find a flexi way of working that works for you.
Nice. Next question is to Millie. Millie, it says you seem super confident and positive, which is awesome. Do you feel like most Gen Z people share that mindset? Or are these their common struggles your generation is facing?
I'm not always super confident. I try to be positive most of the time. But yeah, I was a nervous wreck when I started here just over a year ago. And I think I can speak on behalf of the other grads as well. It's, so nerve-wracking, and the unknown is so scary. And I think no matter how much reassurance you get, it has to come from within, that confidence. And I think a lot of it is just time in the role, time in the workplace. Because for most of my first year, I was just sort of learning how to be an employee as well as how to do the work. And especially a company like Westpac, there's so much to understand and unpack outside of our day-to-day role. So that, came with a lot of time, and I'm still getting there now. But I just tried to sort of hone in on the positive attitude. And I think the confidence is something that, as I said, comes with time, and I'm still getting there now, faking it till I make it. But definitely a struggle for young people, and I don't think I'm the only one to say that.
Yeah, I think it's also it's business dependent, right? To keep that positivity going and that culture embedded. No, thanks, Millie. The next question I'm going to pose to Louise is, it sounds like Gen Z is very adaptable in the tech and corporate sector. What about sectors such as trades? Are the same things true there?
Yes, because even in the trades, there's loads of technology transformation happening. So if you think about the use of technology for running small businesses, running equipment, the change to prefabricated framing, the way that building and construction is changing on a daily basis is really exciting. So this generation, I expect, will accelerate the change in that sector, which will be incredible for New Zealand's productivity. It's exciting.
Awesome. That sounds good. We're back to Millie. Millie, you're very popular on the queues here at the moment. Millie, what's your biggest concern for the future of your generation? What should older generations do better or change to help?
I think, yeah, as we touched on before, maybe understanding more our preference for learning and working and sort of how that's been impacted growing up, especially with COVID. I think it's easy for, speaking for myself as well, for a generation to perceive other generations in a bit of a negative light just because they don't understand them. And yeah, that can be said for me as well. My generation looking at older generations like, oh, they're so old-fashioned. Why can't they, get with the times and things? So I think that's a really key thing, is just getting to know them and their preferences on a personal level, and also how the external factors have influenced those preferences as well, is, yeah, really important thing.
Right. Good answer. Back to you, Louise. Are there any examples of organizations who have done a good job in adapting or optimizing their workplace of Gen Z?
Yes, I think Millie's given heaps of examples that have really worked for her. Having those graduate dedicated programs really provides a support structure for graduates. And if you're not a large corporate like Westpac, you can still achieve that by perhaps collaborating with other small businesses. So if perhaps you have a small team of only 10 and you've got one graduate, you could perhaps find other organisations that are in the same industry that you could group together with perhaps 5 or 6 and provide a graduate program connected. So I think that there's always creative solutions to achieve the kind of wonderful experience that Millie's had. I think there's also lots of cool things going on, and the sector's changing to Gen Z. So we're seeing shorter internships, shorter rotations. So if someone's going through a rotation over a year, perhaps through 5 or 6 departments, organisations are choosing to speed up those rotations. Largely because they're understanding the need to address the retention with these team members, but also just understanding they learn faster. They're able to take on more information quicker. So I think those kind of things are good to adapt to. We're also seeing accounting firms do things like take on part-time students at year 2, and then so that by the time they start as a graduate, they're already quite assimilated to the workplace. As Millie said, the first year is really just assimilating to the world of work and the world of your business and learning all of it. So the more that workplaces can accelerate that start, it's a good idea to consider it if you can.
Great. We've got another question, Millie, and see how best you can answer this. Do you feel like your ideas are often pushed back or dismissed by older generations due to, say, lack of experience? How do you address that with your manager?
Great question. Tough one. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely felt that before, and I think everyone probably has, being a new starter in the workplace. It's definitely not Gen Z specific. I think that's going to be the case for any new starter, whether you're a millennial starting at a new company. I think that sort of comes with the initial period. And I think whether it's coming from people pushing back on you, that's sort of making you feel less confident to share ideas, or maybe that your ideas aren't perceived in the way that you intended them. I guess having the confidence to be able to push back and back yourself is something that I'm definitely still working on myself. And yeah, I think possibly, well, it hasn't happened to me too much, luckily, but really important to be vulnerable and express actually how it made you feel when you felt shut down or you felt dismissed or that your ideas weren't worthy, which I think my generation is doing a really good job of, as I said before, being really vulnerable and open to actually how we're feeling or how something made us feel. And perhaps the people that were contributing to that feeling weren't even aware of it in the first place. So just, bringing that to light is really helpful.
Great answer, Millie. Well done. On the spot there. Louise, if we jump back to you, would you say that society's moved towards being more PC and inclusive, I take it, schooling systems hiding the differences in performance, etc., that Gen Z struggle to receive constructive feedback?
I definitely think that it's a contributor. So if you think about how prior generations grew up, there was one winner. Whereas the Gen Z grew up in the generation where everybody got a medal. Literally, as my children were involved in sports, we would hand out 130 medals to all juniors. So this is the kind of system and time that they've grown up in. They've also grown up in a time where their rights as humans have been really made profoundly apparent to teachers, coaches, and people in the community, that there are certain expectations of way young children and older children going into their teenage years all deserve to be treated. And I think that treating all people with respect, whether they're a 2-year-old, a 12-year-old, or a 20-year-old, is entirely a good move. But it is a change. It's a change from prior generations. So I think that you can coach and teach people how to receive constructive feedback, and that if you build a relationship of trust with the person first, where they know that you are their biggest fan, and you're there to champion them and support their career and support their life, that they will take your feedback very, very well. But again, I think it's for us to rise to the challenge of how are we providing that feedback, and to make sure that it's safely received by generation like for Millie or whoever it is that you're providing the feedback. Everyone must be able to look at Millie and say she would be a delight to provide feedback to, but only if she's going to feel safe, that that's been received in a positive way, in a nurturing way, and in a way that we want her to win and we want her to do great.
Yeah, I fully agree on that point. Louise, another one for you. Do you guys think that remote working is impacting our younger generations? For example, when I was young, I learned through osmosis, listening to meetings, water cooler chats. Are they getting the same experiences?
Yeah, so my personal view on this is that young people are better in collaborative environments wherever possible. So it is, again, a balance. You've got to work out what your organisational strategy needs, what you think this generation need, and find somewhere in the middle that meets their needs for flexibility. And I think Millie can talk to this as well. But for me personally, I think with the mental health crisis, we do need to make sure that young people are in social environments where they're supported, they're in a community, and they are learning through osmosis. And again, I think it depends on your business and the degree of risk. For Millie working in human resources, you can make a mess of things if you don't have the right support around you. So it would be important that she would be around her colleagues and her more experienced colleagues at least some or most of the time.
Right. So we are running out of time, but I think I'll give Louise this. There's a comment more than a question here, which says, Louise, you seem like a wonderful CEO who's very in touch with her client subjects and a great advocate for Gen Z. So there you go, Louise. Well done on that.
That's very kind. Thank you.
This brings us to the end of our session, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Ngā mihi nui. Thank you to our panelists and for everyone's questions. So I think the key takeouts: be mindful of your Generation Z workforce and the different strengths and abilities they can bring to the business. Work smarter when managing them to get the best business outcomes. Harness the benefits and individual strengths of a multi-generational workforce to improve the culture and productivity of your business. We'll be posting this video up on our Smarts channel if you want to watch it again or share with your colleagues. Keep an eye out for our next Westpac Smarts webinar. We'll have a Westpac ambassador, Richie McCaw, talking to Ruben Tucker, Managing Director, Institutional Business Banking, about leadership and resilience. We know they're going to have a tough act to follow after this insightful session. Ka kite ano. See you again next time.